Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Miles Thompson. I'm the co-lead of the Psychological Sciences Research Group in HAS, and I just want to talk to you briefly this afternoon about resilience from a psychological perspective. Of course, I know that many other subject areas have their own study of resilience, but this afternoon I just want to focus on psychology. Just very quickly, psychological research into the topic of resilience kind of began since the end of the Second World War and really gathered momentum in the 1970s. Essentially, psychological researchers noticed that many children, and noticed that the focus is quite developmental, that many children suffered from traumas which would normally knock them off their developmental track, their developmental trajectories, but many of these children actually did fine. Some even really thrived. And psychological researchers started asking why. And in the 1970s, they started to work out what they were going to call this and hit upon the term resilience. Decades on, and this research is being led by someone called Anne Maston, who's based at the University of Minnesota, and she defines resilience as a class of phenomena characterized by good outcomes in spite of serious threats to adaptation or development. She talks about this in her public-facing book, Ordinary Magic. And the book title is important because it points to where Maston thinks the skills for resilience lie. Ordinary magic. So decades of research highlight three different factors. First of all, things around family relationships. So basically positive attachments to either parents or other adult figures who provide a loving and stable relationship for the children. Then secondly, community and organisations, so things like schools and healthcare systems and Cubs and Scout groups around the individuals. And then thirdly, also things within the individual, traditional psychological skills like problem solving and positive outlook and meaning in life and things like that. However, it's important to notice that when resilience is being pushed as a psychological product, so often it only focuses on things within the individual, and that's potentially a mistake. To the extent that these days, when Maston now talks about resilience, she does not talk about the capacity of an individual, but more broadly talks about the capacity of a system. And I think this is very deliberate. Resilience research in recent years has been very influenced by ecological systems theory, which sees things much broader than the individual alone. So taking into account family, community, and the individual, not just the individual alone. And I think this is very important when we think about climate change and the wider ecological emergency, particularly if we think about things like eco-anxiety. If we think about psychological resilience from just an individual perspective, then eco-anxiety is something that maybe you deal with in individual therapy, maybe something you focus on with relaxation or distraction. But if you think about psychological resilience as being something contextual and systemic, then eco-anxiety is perhaps something which you deal with in terms of behaviour change, even activism, promoting doing different within individuals, within communities, within families, all the way up to national and international governments. And that's one of the interesting tensions and also potentials within the psychological topic of resilience. I wish I had more time to talk to you about this more this afternoon, but unfortunately that's all I've got time for. Thank you for your time.